Hello everyone, I'm Creative 3D Hub and this is my first video on my YouTube channel. Hope you like it. In this video I will talk about how I made this scene in a public bathroom and the steps I followed to get the result you are seeing on the screen. Well, first of all, the references. The references are the best way to know what you want to model in 3D. They can also be a good ally whenever you have doubts about how to do this or that. They have always helped me when I was not very sure what to do, so use them will be good for you. Once you have gathered enough reference images and have in mind the idea you want to realize, time to model. For the scene I made, I used some reference images to find a structure that I liked, mixing objects from one photo with objects from the other and other things that I thought could fit well in the scene. And here we have it. The base of our stage is ready to be filled with the objects we need to make it a real public bathroom. Just a little note, it is important to know the dimensions of our stage to make it as realistic as possible. I recommend you use a character to measure it and compare it with the objects that you are going to create. Now that we have the base, it's time to make the missing objects to have an optimal result of how our scenario is turning out. In this case, I made the sink in proportion to the character's size as a guide to make it as true to life as possible. I did the same with other objects such as the tap, the paper dispenser, the gel dispenser, the wastebasket, the doors, etc. It is important to know that the objects do not necessarily have to be the same as in the reference images that we use. It will not always be exactly identical, but it is good that it is something similar to what we would find in a real public bathroom. Once we have everything ready, it's time to start texturing. The first object we have to texture is the base, at least in my case. What has been the structure of our 3D environment? That way we will shape our stage with the colors and patterns that we like. From there, we will have in mind what colors and textures we will use for our next objects. But if you're still not sure which textures to use, you can start by texturing basic and small objects by comparing which texture would fit best, and from there on, shape that idea for the environment you want to build. But, where do we get the textures? Well, let me tell you that there are many places where you can get all kinds of textures like Polyheaven, Ambient CG, etc. But, the one that has served me and helped me a lot is Textures.com. On that page they have many textures of very good quality. You just have to register and every day you will have 15 free credits to download many of the textures they have without any problem. I chose a few textures that would fit the base of my scene and started applying them. I chose one for the roof, another for the side walls, and the last one for the floor. The problem came when I applied them one by one. In many cases it is possible that when applying them they do not fit well because the UVs are wrongly placed or the object is not well mapped. In my case, the only thing I had to do was map them by giving the cube projection option, since my base was like a cube but more rectangular. In the texture of the ceiling I added a color ramp to make the texture more gray and dark. In the texture of the walls I added a color and a color ramp to make them more white, and in the texture of the floor I used a color to change the default color that came with the texture and choose a sadder one to combine the floor with the walls and ceiling. We already have the textured base, so let's move on to the other objects. In the mirrors I used the glass BSDF, the glossy BSDF and the Fresnel. In the glass I completely lowered the UR because it gave the sensation of fuzziness and that was not the result I wanted. I touched and modified some settings of the materials to give the result of a real mirror that reflects the other objects in the scene. At first I had problems with the reflection because the glass did not reflect things well. Taking into account that the scene was going to be rendered in Eevee, it was to be expected that it would look like this. So I was looking at how to solve this problem. And the best solution was to use a reflection plane that would make objects realistically reflectable. For the sink I only used the principal BSDF because I think it gave a good enough result to leave it that way. I only had to change some parameters like the roughness, lower the metallic and decrease the specular a bit to get the result that I liked the most. I did the same with the paper dispenser and the trash can. I changed some parameters until I got the result that was closest to what I wanted. It's just editing variables and seeing which one is the closest to what you are looking for. It can even be fun if you like to experiment with different materials and see what you can get by mixing them. With the gel dispenser it was almost the same except for a small part that was the one in the middle. In that part I had to use two glossy BSDFs, a glass BSDF and a layer weight as well as two mixed shaders to combine all the materials so that this small triangle would give the impression of transparent plastic. That way you could see what was inside the gel. The gel itself has the same materials but with the color and the variables modified. For the doors I used only the BSDF principle and I changed certain parameters. It was not necessary to modify anything else since I liked the result. Now that we have all the textured objects and their respective materials, we will light the scene. In this part of the lighting I created two long tubes as if they were light bulbs and I gave each one an emission. I also created that support so that the light bulbs were attached to it, to which I added the materials transparent BSDF, glass BSDF, emission and Fresnel. That way I would get a transparent support that could reflect a part of the bulbs, so that it would be seen that the bulbs were inside the support. I duplicated the tubes 3 more times and spread them across the ceiling so they would fit well into the scene. Now we move on to the general lights. In this scene I decided to use several point lights scattered around the scene and 4 area lights that served as light emitters for the bulbs that were embedded in the ceiling. I did it that way because I think it's a good way to replicate adequate lighting for a stage set in public restrooms. I had to move certain lights to one side or the other, increase the intensity of some lights for a greater brightness and to be able to illuminate the scene in its entirety. When we already have the final scene prepared and lit, it's time to render. We make sure to choose the render engine that we want to use for our scene. In my case I will choose Eevee. Within Eevee I will increase the render samples for a better render quality and I will activate the ambient occlusion options for the shadows, bloom to generate a glowing effect and of course activate the screen space reflections option. We will check the box that says refraction. With this box activated, we will allow objects that are inside a transparent object to be seen. Another important section is the format of our scene and the frame rate per second that we want to use. I will use the resolution 920 by 1080 and 24 FPS per second. When you have everything configured, the only thing we have to do is go to the Output Properties section, decide in which folder we want to save the render and choose the type of format for our scene. In this case it is only an image so I will take it in PNG format. We are going to render an inside to render image and that's it. We have already taken our first render of our scene. And that's all folks, this is how I made this simple scene in Blender. I hope this video has helped you in some way and see you in the next videos to come. Creative 3D Hub says goodbye, see ya.